Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. My name is Gerald Bimawaba, and today we will tackle about the common logical functions in Excels. And let's learn how to use them. Function end. Function end requires two logical statements. And the description says that returns true if all of its arguments are true. This is the code, and it shows that and the before checks if the college degree is true. And if it's true, then it must check C4, which is age and years, must be greater or equal to 18. So that's how they evaluate. And so let's evaluate it through. The job requirement requires college degree and adult age. And since the worker has a college degrees and an age of 24, that's true. College degree, they have a college degree, but they don't nearly close to being an adult, but still, they're 17, they're disqualified. Even if their age is an adult age, but they don't have a college degree, that's also false. And of course, if they don't have college degree and they're still a child, that's false. Now, moving on to if statement. If statement requires first one logical statement or test and the value for true and the value for false. You can leave the value true and false as none, because if you remain them as nothing, they would return true and they will return false automatically in a default setting. And the description for is it specifies a logical test to perform. Here is the if example. If a person is an adult, of course, here in this logical statement or statement, yes, if statement, you can see it checks if F4 here, an age is it greater than or equal to 18. And if the number is greater than or equal to 18, then it is returns adult. And if it's false, it will return a child. And you can see in the given example, 20 is greater than 18, so they're an adult. 45 is greater than 18, so they're an adult. And 15 and 10 are less than 18, so they're false in a logical statement, and that means the value returned is child. If statement is a different thing than ifs, because in the description, there is no value for false. It only checks until it runs through all the values and until they find the first true expression among the test and here. As you can see, it's not limited only to 2 tests and it can be applied multiple times. Here, the description checks whenever one or more conditions are met that correspond to the first true expression. And in this copy code, you can see it checks if the I4 cell, if it's greater or equal to 60, they're a senior citizen. If it's greater than or equal to 18, then they're an adult. If that's false still, then if the number is greater than 13 and equal to 13, then they're a teen. And here is the expression for if the age is less than 13, then that's a child. And as you can see, it's a very long expression. It's not limited to 2 tests. And I applied 4. You can see here, the senior citizen, because it's greater than 60, that means it's a senior citizen. And since adult is less than 60, then they are greater than 18, then that means they're an adult. That goes the same. Teen is less than 18, but greater than 13, so that means it's returned to a teen. And finally, since the number 3 is less than 13, then that is a child. Moving on, in a not function requires only one logical expression, and that returns reverse the logic of its argument. So I got here a boolean using the not function. It will test and turn false into true. Next is OR statement. Now, similar to AND, there is 2 logical expressions, and it must be returns true if any arguments is true. You can see here in the OR example that if you're sick or if you're under an extracurricular activity, then you can be excused. Since given here, it must be returned O4, must be returned true, and it can be the same for extracurricular activity. That means here shows that O4 is true and P4 is also true. That means they returns true. They're excused. If they're sick but not under an extracurricular activity, they're still excused. That's the same for extracurricular activity, but they're not sick, then they're excused. However, if they're absent but not in the reason of sickness or extracurricular activity, then they're not excused from the school. And finally, XOR, it's an close yet far different description and function of XOR. In the XOR statement or syntax, similar to OR, it requires 2 logical expressions only. And the description returns true if any arguments is true, but turns false if all arguments are all true or all false. And that is the case for this XOR example. If you want an ice cream, if someone offers it to you, they give you an option. You can choose one, only one. You can choose chocolate or vanilla. You cannot choose both. So in this Example, if a person choose both chocolate and vanilla, they're too greedy. That means they will not have an ice cream. And if someone choose a chocolate ice cream, then that's true. And if someone chose a vanilla ice cream, then that's also true. However, if they don't choose or chose between chocolate or vanilla, then they still don't have ice cream. And lastly is the function true and false. They're similar in description and the output is just different. In the syntax here, they don't need to add anything in the parentheses because in the description, it returns to the logical value of false if you use a false function. That's the same for the true function. It returns the logical value of true. And that is all. See you later for the next video. See ya!